We will collect these and address them during the dedicated question and answer session at the end of each presentation. So unfortunately, our director, SAARC Energy Centre, Abdul Rashid Jokio, could not join as he had to quickly rush towards the meeting with the minister. So I'll just speak a few words which he had communicated me to speak on behalf of him. So it is a great pleasure to welcome you all on this SAARC webinar. The event is organized by our center in collaboration with IRENA to address the pivotal role net metering and related compensating mechanisms play in accelerating solar adoption while keeping our grids stable and reliable. As technical arm of the SAARC Secretariat, our center has undertaken various interventions to promote energy security, foster renewable energy development, support rural electrification, and build the capacity of energy professionals across the South Asia regions. So, ladies and gentlemen, the SAARC region comprises nearly 25% of the world's population. Energy security and sustainability remain central to the prosperity of South Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, net metering has played a key role in enabling households, businesses, and industries across the world to become active participants in the energy transition. But as solar penetration fairly increases, the problem with the technical and financial challenges have been compensating exported electricity fairly without compromising grid stability or utility viability. Today's session, we will delve into how net metering frameworks have evolved globally from simple retail rate netting to net billing and value-based pricing mechanisms. Dear participants, we are privileged to have with us today three distinguished experts, Dr. James Walker, who is the team lead systematic innovation at IRENA, Engineer Syed Faizan Ali Shah, who is the energy advisor at the Ministry of Energy, Pakistan, and Dr. Gayatri Nair, who is the Program Officer for Technology Infrastructure Grid Integration at IRENA. We hope their insights will greatly enrich our understanding of effective and sustainable net metering framework for South Asia. In closing, I'll thank you all for joining this webinar. I hope this will be an interactive section, so please feel free to participate in the discussion and share your valuable views. So thank you very much. Now I will quickly share my slides. Maybe I'll ask James Walker, Gayatri to briefly introduce themselves to the participants. James, over to you.
Thank you, Asansab. Very nice to be with you this morning for us here in Germany, this afternoon for many of you, and looking forward to the discussion. So I'm James Walker. I'm team lead for systemic innovation here at IRENA, and that means it's my job to be thinking about all the novel solutions that can help us to manage an orderly, resilient, and value-adding energy transition. And in that context, it's very nice to be with member country stakeholders to discuss some of the insights from our work, and I look forward to doing so alongside my colleague Gayatri.
Thanks, James. So I'm Gayatri Nair. I work as a Program Officer for Technology and Infrastructure, and I'm also based in Bonn, working alongside James. My focus has been on developing a lot and coordinating a lot of grid assessment studies, or grid stability studies, if you could say that. And I work also on a lot of grid modernization, interconnection, and grid resilience work streams. So I'm looking forward to this discussion and hearing from the SAARC experiences as well. Thank you.
Over to Faizan, if Faizan is there with us. Faizan.
Thank you for having me. My name is Syed Faizan Ali. I'm an electrical engineer by profession. Currently, I'm advising the Ministry of Energy on various initiatives, whether it is solarization, grid modernization, digitization, and other aspects as well. So I have around 2 decades of experience in the generation, transmission, and distribution system of Pakistan. So today I'll be presenting on Pakistan's use case of the whole net metering and the solar boom, which the whole world is in awe of. So thank you for having me. Looking forward.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, Gayatri, and thank you very much, Faizan, for your brief introduction. So I'll just try to give 1-2 slides just to set up the tune of this webinar, give an overview of net metering regimes in South Asia, and then I'll hand it over to the participants for their brief presentations. So first of all, my slides are visible. Am my slides visible?
Yes, they're visible.
Thank you. So rooftop solar capacity across the member states, we have seen that India has been leading this region. It has nearly more than 30,000 megawatts of rooftop solar installed and connected to the distribution grid. On the Pakistan side, it has been a marvelous story. I'm pretty sure Mr. Faizan would delve into the details of how Pakistan came from 2015 up till now, and the numbers are really staggering from 6,6100 megawatt. Regarding Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, they are also lagging a little bit behind. Sri Lanka with 1,347 megawatt and Bangladesh 250 megawatts. So basically, net metering, as far as this mechanism is concerned, the basic theme behind is that the rooftop of each household, they could install solar system. The prices of the solar systems have been decreasing in the past 10-15 years. And previously, the mechanism was initiated in USA in 1990s when net metering was installed, was initiated, and whereby the price of the full retail value was same as 1 kilowatt hour in US. And then the same thing was replicated in different areas in EU and South Asia. So up till now, to our knowledge, 70 plus countries have already installed net metering policies and mechanisms in their countries. Then if we go further from 2015 to 20 in South Asia, the problem with the increased installation of net metering started because the high penetration eroded the utility revenue. It also imparted the fixed costs which the distribution network has to pass on to the non-solar consumer, which could not afford the solar systems. So by next phase in 2020 to present, the net metering is being shifted into the net billing mechanism. So for example, we have seen in Pakistan, prosumer regulations, California, and I'm pretty sure many states in India have also implemented net billing. Then the future which we see is there will be increased installation of solar with battery systems, and that could modernize the whole power structure of South Asia. So this is kind of an evolutionary story of net metering mechanisms to net billing and to the future mechanism. That's the way how we see it. Lastly, the slide mentions about why the incentive regimes must evolve. For example, every incentive being given by the government to the consumers or the power utilities, they may have to reduce the incentives with period of time because of the problem which arises due to that mechanism. So net metering in legacy in every reported unit was valued at the full retail price, regardless of the grid needs, and the grid revenue eroded and the grid revenues were shrinking with time. And then there were a lot of problems concerning the technical issues which the grid was facing because of the increased export of electricity by the prosumers to the electricity grid at daytime. So a different reform kind of regime was initiated in Pakistan concerning net billing and smart tariffs, and whereby exports are valued at the market price instead of the retail price. Secondly, the DISCO's revenue and the investment capacity stays sustainable in this case. The network costs are shared fairly among all the consumer classes. So on the one hand, you have a grid reliability, which previously net metering was not there. So secondly, the utility solvency, its revenues and those kind of issues were resolved. Thirdly, the consumer protection was there because the non-solar consumers which were not able to afford the solar electricity or solar panels, they were basically bearing the extra cost of the utility electricity, and a durable solar growth in the South Asia region. So this was just to set up the tune of the net metering regimes in South Asia, SAARC region, and what we expect from our participants is to delve deep into the details. So I will get over to Mr. James Falker. James, would you be presenting first along with Gayatri?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So James, over to you. I would just briefly introduce James. James is the team leader at IRENA. He works to support 170 member countries to drive the widespread adoption of renewable energies. James is based at IRENA's Innovation and Technology Center in Bonn. He is responsible for managing a program of activities focused on identifying novel and innovative solutions for the whole renewable energy supply chain. James has previously worked in a range of roles across academia, research, consultancy, and in UK civil service, always with a focus on renewable energy. Over to you, James.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Can I double check you can see these slides now, everyone?
Perfect, James.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I'd like to start by thanking Hassan and the SAARC team for the opportunity to be here with you and to share our contribution to this important discussion. It's a real privilege to speak directly to stakeholders and colleagues in energy ministries in many of our important member countries, and as Hassan mentioned, there's clear opportunity and challenge in the region that we can discuss in the session. So it's very nice to be here. We're going to discuss the use of renewable energy innovation to integrate further shares of decentralized renewable energy, and in particular to look at net metering and net billing, which Gayatri will cover shortly. The slides seem to be moving themselves, so I'm going to try and manage that as we move. Please bear with me. I'll start by introducing IRENA itself. So we are the International Renewable Energy Agency. As mentioned, we serve, I mentioned, I included 170 member countries in my biography, but it's actually 172 as of today, which is good news. We're continuing to grow the membership. We're headquartered in Abu Dhabi in the UAE, but Gayatri and I are based in our Innovation Technology Centre in Bonn in Germany. Our mandate as an agency globally is to promote the widespread adoption and sustainable use of all forms of renewable energy worldwide. And we're very happy to work with member countries in enhancing their understanding of the opportunities that these renewable technologies can offer them in enhancing their energy security, as has already been mentioned, increasing sustainability of their energy systems, and also to access other benefits that these technologies offer. So within the SAARC membership, we count all of the SAARC member countries as our members, and we see really important work proceeding in the South Asian region, and a great opportunity to seize the benefits that renewables can offer in all of the member countries. So as I say, it's very nice to be with you. I'm going to start by introducing a key principle that underpins all of our work on the innovation stream. So this is trying to address the various challenges that the energy transition offers us through a systemic approach, as we describe it. And the principle and the premise here is that it's very important that we develop new renewable technologies. We come up with better ways to design solar PV panels. We look at new ways of supporting on and offshore wind turbines. We need more enhanced, innovative battery technologies and chemistries. All of this is very important. But unless we also see innovation across the full energy system, we won't achieve the full range of benefits that we can foresee. So we think it's very important that we also see innovation in business models and in the way that consumers are engaged in the energy transition. We see a need for evolving market design, which of course is at the heart of the conversation today around net metering and the transition towards net billing. This is typically underpinned by regulation, and we always encourage an innovative approach to regulation to keep the rules that establish the framework for our systems current and up to date based on emerging technologies. And we also look at the role of innovation, particularly digital solutions, in managing an increasingly complex electricity system, looking at how that can be better managed, monitored, forecasted, and of course actually executed, how the infrastructure can be operated in a more responsive and flexible way. And this is the principle that underpins all of our work in the innovation area, but also I hope at the heart of much of our work as an agency. One of the key pathways that we use to share insights through this innovation lens is what we call the Innovation Landscape series. So these are a series now of 3 flagship publications that are essentially like tomes of knowledge on the state of innovation in the subject matter areas covered. And the core of these publications is what we call a toolbox. So we use these exercises to survey the landscape of the innovation that's underway in the areas covered, and then to propose a series of solutions and tools that we see being developed out in member countries that could be used elsewhere. So the idea is to share good examples of best practice and highlight case studies where innovation is delivering added value in one part of the world so that this can be applied elsewhere. So we started the series by looking at the use of innovation to enhance the integration of variable renewables, very relevant to the conversation today. We also looked then in the second report at the use of end-use sector, so demand-side electrification as a means of further enhancing the resilient integration of renewables, but also providing power inputs for key end-use sectors. And then most recently, the publication I want to spend a little bit of time sharing today was the Innovation Landscape for Sustainable Development Powered by Renewables. And the idea here is we're looking at how renewable energy innovation can contribute to economic development and the enhancement of livelihoods all across the world today in 2026. One of the key important points that we always try to make with this series is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. So the options that make most sense in one geography do not necessarily apply particularly well in others, but we do also see the value of providing transferable insights and identifying the areas where we can share knowledge and apply solutions elsewhere. So that's the background to the contribution. In the most recent publication, Sustainable Development Powered by Renewables, Sustainable Growth Powered by Renewables, we look really at the opportunities that the energy transition and in particular continued deployment of decentralized renewable energy, the opportunity that these efforts can help us to transform economies and to contribute to the livelihoods, welfare, and living conditions of people in their communities. So we have two main themes. One is the use of renewables to enhance the power system resilience, and this is looking at the context in which decentralized renewable power can really help to move system constraints and integrate further renewable contributions in communities. And then we also have a stream focused on the use of renewables for energy access, so in areas where the grid hasn't reached, and the use of renewable powered innovation, novel business models, novel ways of doing things to contribute to local development and in particular productive uses of energy in off-grid communities in particular. So these are the two key themes that run through the most recent innovation landscape, and these are available to have a look at in more detail if this is of interest to you. But we, as I mentioned before, try to break down the energy system into the components where we see a need for further continued innovation and development, and these are, as you see in front of you, the technology infrastructure, business models, key change agents, market design and regulation, and system design and operation. And the key point I want to make today to help set up some of the deep dive detail that Gayatri is going to bring in terms of how we actually go about tackling, in particular, decentralized solar and the net metering, net billing challenge and opportunity, is some of the blocks that I think are most relevant here. So what you see in front of you is the categorization of the toolbox that I mentioned before. And underpinning each of these categories, we have a number of innovations. There's a total of 40 of them. And these can be added together in an appropriate formula for the local circumstances and priorities in a given country or region. And these act as building blocks. So you can take the pillars that are most relevant to the challenges that are being faced in your energy transition and apply the solutions that are most appropriate. So in the context of the conversation today, we could highlight the flexible generation and storage. We could highlight consumers at the center of the transition. We could I think, highlight regulatory and fiscal support for renewable energy deployment, particularly in decentralized contexts, but also the market design and regulatory principles that are needed for the empowerment of consumers. And then, of course, once we've deployed a series of decentralized renewable inputs, we need to then think about how the grid can be supported through innovative mechanisms to enhance system resilience and stability. So I'll just move on to the next slide. As you can see, then these categories have a number of innovations represented within them. And essentially, if you move to the report, if you review this later in your at leisure, essentially, when you have time to look in detail, you see that we have a detailed account of the status and application of the innovation principles that you see in front of you, fitting in these relevant categories. And you can see that a number of these are very relevant to the conversation we're having today. So I hope it's useful to you. We also have toolkits that bring a number of these innovations together, where we can handle or tackle very specific challenges and drive forward towards policy objectives. So the idea is that this toolbox, where we summarize parts of the toolkit and apply them to different challenges, can be useful to policymakers. So, for example, we have a toolkit that is specifically designed to provide solutions towards grid modernization, another looking at decentralized resilient systems. Then we have a toolkit focused on energy access, and one that's more targeted to economic or local development. So I hope these are also useful. I just wanted to highlight a couple of examples that come from the analysis of the landscape and look at where the principles that I'm discussing have been applied. So I'll focus in green in the box, sorry, in the area that's in the box in green in a moment, because I wanted to bring a SAARC example. Many of our examples that we have in the report are focused on particularly innovative and new ways of using renewable energy in Africa. So we always draw attention to the productive use of energy example from Senegal, where we have a solar powered milk preservation system that's being rolled out to enhance rural livelihoods, but also food security and enhancing the resilience of communities using renewable energy. We like the example of the agrivoltaics in Gambia and Mali, where we have solar panels that are, of course, providing electricity in a decentralized agricultural context, but are also providing physical protection for crops, which is a novel or innovative use of a solar panel. And then, as I mentioned, I wanted to draw a more regional example from what we have here. And within the SAARC region and member countries, I can highlight this example from India, where we have an approach from Tata Motors in India to the sourcing of renewable electricity at a corporate level as a means of building the supply side, building the pipeline of renewable inputs, and forming an important contribution to the development of renewable capacity in a decentralized way. And we think this is a really good example that could be replicated elsewhere. My final slide before I hand over to Gayatri is just outlining some of the key principles that we communicate in this most recent landscape report. And these are the considerations and the priorities that we see as the main means that policymakers can take forward some of the insights and translate some of the content that we have in this report into action in their own countries. So I won't read them all to you, and they're detailed in the report, but I'll just pick a couple. We, first of all, think it's really important that there is what we call a comprehensive innovation ecosystem. So this is acknowledging that in the systemic approach that I described at the beginning, we also highlight the important value of ensuring that the approach taken to energy innovation in a given country is aligned to broader innovation priorities across economic development, industrial development, and academic research, to ensure the various parts of a system are working together to bring the the full range of benefits that are possible. We are extremely enthusiastic about the value of number 5, so joint strategies which come out of South-South cooperation, regional collaboration, and this is, I think, at the heart of the work of the SAARC Energy Centre. This is bringing examples from one South Asian country that can give insights and advice and support to another, and that's exactly the kind of knowledge sharing and collaboration that we think is extremely important to coming up with the right solutions that are tailored to local contexts and local challenges and opportunities. So that's a key principle that underpins the focus of today's discussion. Then number 8, engaging and empowering consumers and communities. I know that's not a novel concept when we're dealing with huge shares of decentralized solar on rooftops. You have an engaged and empowered consumer base there already, and that's, I think, very important from an energy system development perspective, from a community perspective, from a livelihood perspective. But of course, it creates challenges and opportunities for how we design and operate and manage the energy systems around those, and that helps set up the discussion that we're about to have. And I look forward to hearing from Gayatri, but also from Faizan on the Pakistan experience, and then hopefully in the discussion and the Q&A we can hear from some of the other country experiences. So thank you again for having us, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion. I'm handing over now to Gayatri, but Hassan, if you want to come back in, please do.
No, thank you very much, James. Let's Gayatri may be requested to start her presentation, then we will discuss about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, James. And thank you once again to the SAARC Energy Centre for this invitation. And today the focus of my presentation will be on how to accelerate the uptake of rooftop solar PV. Many of the solutions have already been mentioned. James have discussed it, Hassan has also discussed it, but I'll just go a little deep dive into some of them, per se, from our experiences and what we have seen in the past based on our studies. Next slide, please, James. So rooftop solar PV. I think I will switch off my fan. Is that clear now? Okay, thank you. So a rooftop solar PV is, again, that is a distributed energy resource, like you can see here, and it's situated near the consumption points, also known as embedded and local generation, and it allows customers to use at least most of it for their own self-consumption and export what is excess to the grid. And this provides the consumers with a lot of advantages, like potential reduction in the electricity cost, improving resilience in terms of extreme events, if at all, and also reduces emissions. So, and since energy security is very key, I would also like to mention that it diversifies generation so that it improves energy security. And with the current geopolitical situation, that is very important. But they bring with them certain challenges. And I think there will be a very good discussion on this later on. But just to highlight some of the points, some key challenges that we already have are the aging grids, which might require grid reinforcement for the uptake of solar PV, because most of these grids that we have now are actually built for large central power generation stations and one-way power flow, which assumes stable demand and passive consumers. But today, the grid must accommodate a lot of numerous small-scale generators providing power into the grid, and this creates an operational strain and raises reliability concerns for the utilities. Bidirectional power flow, as I mentioned, because the consumer is now a prosumer, producing also and sending grids to the excess power to the grid. At some points, the grid could be actually congested, also having exceeding the capacity of lines and the transformers. So this will cause equipment stress as well. So the utilities must plan and operate accordingly in order to maintain service quality and security of the system. Voltage management issues, high levels of rooftop solar can raise local voltages beyond desired limits. So maintaining stable voltage here becomes a significant operational challenge. Intermittency and generation, because solar and wind output can vary with the weather and the daylight. So, and it doesn't match the timing of the demand. So we need to create we require certain operational measures which can balance demand and supply when there is uncertainty on this as well. Another key challenge is that the utilities have limited visibility on these on the production from the solar PV because they are behind the meter and it's not accessible by utilities. So they don't have real-time information on the power output or the status of generation, which causes or have implications for forecasting, outage management, and also network planning. So all of this requires coordination, effective regulation, and also incentives so that people can participate in the uptake of rooftop solar PV. Next slide, please. So since we've worked a lot with a lot of developing countries on the issue, this very same issue, we felt the need to actually come up with a grid modernization toolkit, which gives 10 actions for transformation. This is based on the studies that we have done in the past, and we have put together the key steps we feel should be followed in order to modernize the grid. This is in addition to what James already mentioned in the Innovation Landscape report. We have additional publications on IRENA webpage you can also freely download. We included the recommendations from the study. We did a stakeholder survey, and then we also interviewed some of the stakeholders so that we could bring up these key recommendations. One is majorly one utility or system operator should actually do anticipatory planning, because being reactive is not going to help in the future. You have to be proactive in grid modeling as well as in grid planning, and you have to simulate future scenarios that ensures the participation of high shares of distributed energy resources, and prioritize solutions and targeted upgrades, which are also imminently required in most countries, especially on the distribution side. One has to also update grid codes, which helps the inclusion of renewables as grid-friendly solutions, not causing problems for the operator. Also, in grid-friendly solutions like grid forming DERs, which is catching up a lot. So investing in grid forming solutions could also help. Considering to invest in grid forming solutions. Demand side solutions, demand side mechanisms can be introduced, but you need to have the certain prerequisites for that. Exploring grid services and revenue streams so that there is additional revenue creation from the uptake of renewables such as solar rooftop PV. And key is to engage with customers. I think James also mentioned in the previous slides that customers should be aware on how to use it, how to reduce their energy costs and improve resilience as well. And skills, knowledge transfer, showcasing innovation from other countries with similar topologies and grids are also very important. Next slide, James. So one way of encouraging the uptake of rooftop solar, as Ehsan also mentioned, is net metering. It is key for ensuring there is financial viability for the customer, as well as it provides tangible return to their investment. So remunerating them for any electricity that is exported to the grid. So there have been several mechanisms which have been put in place. One is net metering. It operates on the principle that it measures the difference between electricity consumed versus electricity generated and what is fed into the grid. And they are the customers are credited for surplus solar electricity, which is exported to the grid. It encourages rooftop solar investment by maximizing the value of exported energy. So here in the clause, the key point to note is that it maximizes the value of exported energy. And the major drawback of this mechanism is that the traditional power grid, which continues to exist despite all of these additions of DERs, will require maintenance, updates, and repairs. And these, the cost for these will actually be borne by customers who are not participating in this mechanism. Additionally, the compensation for net metering is usually on a retail basis, which is higher than the wholesale rate. So again, it
kind of provides or subsidizes these customers unfairly. So that's why more and more utilities are moving towards net billing because it supports grid stability. It helps to, because there is a reduced incentive for exporting more power, which is like key to maintain the grid stability or maintain the system as it reliable. And it also helps to maintain utility revenue for grid operation and maintenance. And it encourages the system to be sized according to the requirement of the demand and not to oversize it. So in a way, it promotes self-consumption rather than export. And what is net billing? It is basically where the electricity is compensated at a wholesale or avoided cost rate. I think Ehsan also mentioned this. And it helps you to maximize self-consumption. There are several mechanisms that can be used to maximize self-consumption. One is to have load shifting, where you're using several of the appliances when solar generation is happening at the peak. To size the system optimally, use a battery energy storage system where you can store the excess and use it later for your personal uses. Smart EV charging is one thing I will also talk about in my next slide. And here again, you will accrue more benefits for charging your EVs using the generation from solar PV. So basically, a key takeaway that we can take from this is net metering rewards energy exports, while net billing encourages customers to consume more of their solar generation and to use the grid more efficiently. Next slide, please. So of course, net billing and net metering does not come in a silo. You need to have certain prerequisites, certain enabling conditions to be put in place. One of the key enablers is innovative consumer pricing. Another one is sustainable cost recovery. So we have to ensure that the tariff structures fairly reward energy exports while also encouraging efficient consumption patterns. And also to ensure that the network costs are recovered equitably so that all the consumers contribute to maintaining the grid infrastructure. Of course, as mentioned, you need advanced metering, digital infrastructure, you need to automate the systems, you need appropriate valuation of the distributed generation power, of generated power. One key aspect is prosumer awareness, empowerment, and engagement via automation, because they should be aware of the key benefits that they are accruing from it. And they can there should be an exchange between the utility and the consumer as to how they can maximize their benefits so that they can make informed decisions about their energy usage. Prerequisites is regulatory and technical compliance. So installation, interconnection, operation and maintenance of the net metering systems must comply with the grid code requirements or the distribution grid code requirements. Bidirectional smart metering, peak demand measurement. You have time of use capability that helps to actually support time of use measurement and enable dynamic pricing. The key message here is that successful net metering or net billing actually requires not only supportive policies, but also pricing mechanisms in addition to robust technical standards and smart metering infrastructure. Next slide, James. So some of the, as requested by the SEC, we have put together some examples from the globe on net metering, net billing, and you can see that there has been a shift from net metering to net billing in most cases. Even though in some cases the distinction is not very clear as to what is a pricing mechanism and what is the distinction between what is the price given to imports versus exports, but you can also see a pattern. So countries have changed from net metering to, say, in Malaysia to solar ATAP, which is basically the Solar Accelerated Transition Action Program. In Finland, they are using dynamic and time of use pricing. In Germany, for example, they have feed-in tariff. It's an outlier, I would say, but they have self-consumption contracts which go into for almost 20 years, which can be maintained for 20 years. Nigeria is a very interesting example because this is a very, very new regulation that came about, I think, last week. Again, here it is not very clearly said what is, but I assume because when we read through the pricing mechanism, it sounded more like net billing. So in UK, it's a flat rate smart export guarantee. It's the same rate for every exported unit. But then in UK, you have a lot of DSOs which work in this, and energy aggregators which work on this program. So it depends or varies from utility provider to provider on what is provided or what is the export rate versus the import rate. So a key takeaway I would like to say from this slide is there is a global shift from net metering towards net billing and market-based compensation, and self-consumption is increasingly being valued higher than electricity export to the grid. One of the solutions that can improve the uptake of solar PV and of course, prevent higher exports, which leads to more stability and more reliability in the grid, is to deploy smart EV charging, where automatically the electric vehicle can be aligned to charge with the solar production, prioritizing a solar surplus over drawing more expensive energy from the grid. And what are the key benefits it can offer? It lowers energy cost by reducing grid electricity consumption. It's more efficient because it is self-generated. It contributes to reducing the strain on the power grid. It reduces the need to reinforce the grid, which is a key topic nowadays, because together with grid modernization, one has to also think about grid expansion. And wherever you can reduce that grid expansion and optimize grid use is more important. EV charging as a demand response tool can also provide support to cope up with the voltage challenges, which is caused by the sudden change in demand and supply. And via local markets for trading electricity flexibly, you can create created for neighborhoods or communities or small cities. You can trade electricity from the EVs, and but it needs also a supportive regulatory frameworks and appropriate values for these services. But having said that, it can actually help the DSOs manage grid congestion and also control the voltage, which is key for distribution grid operators. Coming to the last slide, two other solutions that could be utilized, and we have discussed this in plenty in most of our innovation landscape reports. And we have some key examples. One is developing energy communities, and the other is peer-to-peer trading platforms. Energy communities, it provides an alternative or a supporting model to traditionally state-owned or private energy utility. And it plays a very significant role by allowing the engagement of communities and allowing trading amongst participants in that community. So it kind of brings together a lot of members or community members who can trade, and local innovation, energy solution and service models that can be tailored for this particular exchange can be developed and improve the uptake of renewables without creating problems for the grid. Another one is peer-to-peer trading platform. It is an online market platform, but it definitely needs certain prerequisites like blockchain, smart metering, and distributed ledger technologies. Here, transaction is allowed amongst customers and prosumers at a retail level, and it's facilitated through robust ICT networks as well. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gayatri, for your excellent presentation. So I think we should move on to our next presenters, and afterwards then we will have a specific question answer session for all our presenters. So over to you, Faizan. I would briefly introduce Faizan. Faizan is an accomplished electrical engineer and seasoned power sector professional with almost 2 decades of extensive experience across Pakistan's energy value chain, including generation, transmission, and distribution. His career reflects a strong blend of technical expertise, strategic leadership, regulatory insight, and project execution capability. He is a member of the federal government Smart Metering Committee and has also served as a member of Prime Minister's Solar Committee, where he contributed to policy deliberations on net metering reforms, distributed energy resources, and energy transition strategies. So over to you, Faizan, for a presentation.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so I'll just turn off my camera just to avoid any internet issues. So thank you for having me. I'll be presenting the solar net metering, challenges, opportunities, way forward. We'll be learning how Pakistan's solar boom happened and now at the moment, what sort of challenges we are facing and what we're doing in order to cope with those challenges. So before we go into the details, I'd just like to introduce myself. Maybe it's like the third time for my introduction. I'll just quickly highlight. So I've been involved in the generation, transmission, distribution sector of Pakistan for the last 20 years. I've set up 300 megawatts solar IPPs in Pakistan, which are the largest. I've also had the opportunity to solarize the largest distributed energy 11,000 school solarization program, which was funded by Asian Development Bank in Pakistan. Apart from that, I've been involved in policy making roles with the federal government, where I've contributed towards the Renewable Energy Policy 2019. Apart from that, I sit on various federal level committees, whether it is Smart Metering Committee. I also lead the digitization initiatives of the power division in Pakistan. I'm also a member of the Federal Steering Committee of the Battery Energy Storage Systems, the Generation Planning Committee, and also I'm the board member of one of the distribution utilities in Pakistan, which is Islamabad Electric Supply Company. So today's, I'll just skip my content slide, keeping in view the time constraint. So Gayatri already highlighted some of the regimes. I'll quickly go through these regimes once again. So one of the most in vogue regime when the solar PV boom started across the globe was the feed-in tariff. So the feed-in tariff is something in which all of the energy generated from the inverter is set out into the grid, and you get one a tariff which is announced by the utility or the regulator, and it is contracted for a specific number of years. The thing is that generally you're not allowed to increase the installed capacity, so your capacity remains fixed as it is, and you get a highly incentivized tariff. So this was in vogue in Germany as well. It also happened in California. The drawback with this is that whatever the feed-in tariff you get at the start of the tenure, that has to continue throughout the tenure. In some of the areas, what we have observed is that this feed-in tariff is, for example, in Australia, it was 4 times the retail tariff, and then gradually it has reduced, and now it's much lower than the retail tariff. So this practice is also in place. The second part is the net metering, which was in place in Pakistan from 2015 to 2025. And this is, like Ehsan also explained, Gayatri also explained, it's unit-to-unit adjustment. And then there is some tweaking within this regime, which I'll explain in the next slide, based on the monthly and the quarterly credit adjustments. And the last one is the net billing regime. So in this net billing regime, it is similar to the feed-in tariff regime, but the metering infrastructure creates a little difference between the net billing and the feed-in tariff regime. In the net billing regime, whatever you export, it is basically exported after it is adjusted, after some of it is self-consumed, and whatever is surplus is exported using that same metering infrastructure. So in the feed-in tariff regime, you might have 2 meters, one for the import, and whatever you're generating, it is exported. While in the net billing regime, you only have a single meter, and whatever you are generating, it is first being self-consumed, and only the surplus is being exported through that same metering infrastructure route for which you are also importing. So what happens is that whatever then you are exporting back to the grid, you get a specific rate for that, and that is announced by obviously the regulator, or if it is a investor-owned utilities, then investors basically decide what rate you get, and from time to time it is adjusted. And this regime is basically monthly basis. So the units are not credited; they are adjusted on that monthly basis, and the credit might be can be credited to the next months as a balance. So in Pakistan, this was the net metering regime. So it was divided into 4 quarters: quarter 1, 3, 2, 3, and 4, each of 3 months. And initially, it was a unit-to-unit adjustment within these months. And whatever the surplus units were there, they were credited for the next month, for the next second month of that quarter. And then similarly for the third month. And at the end of the third month, if you had surplus units, those were converted into a monetary terms, and then that credit was, transferred to the next quarter where you can utilize it. So, for example, at the end of the quarter third, if I have, say, 500 units, those will be converted into the monetary terms, say 20,000 rupees, and that 20,000 rupees will stay in my balance and will be shifted towards the quarter number 4. And now, if in that quarter number 4 or any month of the quarter number 4, I am exporting lesser than import, so obviously I'll face a bill. And that bill will be then adjusted from that carried forward monetary value. So all in all, it was a very fruitful regime in Pakistan. But the drawback of this regime can be seen in the lower part of this slide, is that in Pakistan, quarter number 4, quarter number 1, quarter number 2, these quarter number 4 and 2 are basically shoulder months. So the credit builds up, right? It was highly incentivized towards the solar PV systems. So the credit was built up only to be consumed in quarter 3, right now in which we are sitting at the moment. The issue with this is that whatever the credit is being built up, it is being built up intentionally. So the people were intentionally installing higher capacity solar PV systems than required, building up their credits only to be used in this quarter number 3. Because as we all know that in this quarter number 3, in either in Pakistan or in India or in the SAARC region, the weather becomes very hot and humid. So whatever the credit builds up, it's being utilized in quarter number 3. The issue with this is that your peak demand then starts to push up, and in the other quarters, those the additional power plants which have been installed to supply that peak demand remain redundant or unutilized for 3 quarters, only to be utilized in quarter number 3. And this, unfortunately, then yet again pushes up your overall retail tariff. So Pakistan's policy evolutions of the net metering framework starts from 2015. So this is a little timeline which I thought is worth mentioning here. So in 2015, NEPRA, the regulator, issued these alternative renewable energy distributed generation regulations, which are better known as the net metering regulations. Initially, from 1 kilowatt to 1 megawatt systems were permitted, bidirectional metering, and then the contract terms were initially only for 3 years. Later on, in 2018, from 2018 to 2021, this contract regime of 3 years was extended to 7 years. And initially, only the residential consumers were there, and later on, commercial, industrial, and agricultural consumers were also included in 2018. The cumulative capacity stayed below 350 megawatt till to 2021. In 2022 to 2024, we saw post-COVID era explosive uptakes as tariff rose and the panel prices collapsed. So roughly, approximately during this era, the capacity almost tripled every year. So from 0.7 to 1.3 to 2.5 gigawatt cumulative till 2024. And then at the end of 2025, even before, say, 2025, there was an attempt to change these regulations. Unfortunately, it failed. But at the end of 2025, the government decided that enough is enough. And they drafted these prosumers regulations, which are basically better known as the net billing regulations. The buyback rate was proposed to fall from 27 kilowatt hours, 27 rupees per unit, to the average energy purchase price, which is around 8 to 10 rupees, so almost 3 times less. And then on 8th February 2026, this prosumer regulations was notified, was approved. The existing consumers of one of the question is that the existing net metering consumers, which had a tenure of 7 years, what would happen to those? So it was decided that they will remain as it is until their tenure is completed. And after that, once the tenure is completed, they will also be shifted back to the net billing regime. But this was only done after the public backlash. Initially, they were also converted to the net billing regime, but only after the public backlash, the regulator backtracked and then changed this and decided to continue till the expiry of their contract terms of 7 years. So overall, the Pakistan's trajectory is divided into 4 phases. Phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Phase 1 is basically the pre-COVID phase. So the net metering regulations were there, but the cumulative capacity was very less, and broadly, the US PKR US exchange rate was also very stable. In the phase 2, which is almost during the COVID and the aftermath of the COVID, the supply chain was disrupted. During that phase also, the solar more or less remained the same. It was the cumulative capacity reached around 350 megawatt by 2021, which was up from 190 megawatt in the previous year, although it was still doubling. But the catalyst which was forming, which was pushing towards the solar boom was that rupee slipped from 136 per USD to 160 rupees per USD. And then what happened was in phase 3, this even beyond 160, it went to 279, the US dollars PKR parity. And it was the PKR devalued around 75%. What happens was the base tariff rose 140%, and it was due to the capacity payments that of the existing IPPs. Solar became a hedge against both currency and the energy risk. The state banks Pakistan's green financing scheme was also in place. Initially in phase 1, phase 2, solar was still pretty much capex intensive. So this green financing scheme, which was that 6% on 6% financing interest rate, the people of Pakistan can finance their solar PV systems. So this also helped in pushing towards the solar boom. And then, so in phase 4, we saw that the import prices fell from I'll show you the curve from like 25 cents. It went down as low as 10 and 9 cents per watt. The net meter capacity then immediately boomed. Total solar panel imports reached around 50 plus gigawatt. And the industrial, commercial, agriculture, all residential consumers started installing, and we can clearly shift that. We can clearly see that the energy demand also declined during this phase. So these 4 graphs explain the solar rush. On the top 2 graphs show the US2 PKR exchange, which I just highlighted, and the average energy purchase price in Pakistan. So both of these graphs show a similar trend. And also the bottom right graph, the solar panel imports are also linked towards these energy prices in Pakistan and the USD to PKR exchange rate. So all these 3 graphs, if you see, show a similar trends. And the graph on the lower left side is more or less exactly opposite to these 3 graphs, which shows the decline in the panel prices in US cents per watt. So it went from as high as 35 cents in fiscal year 2017 to as low as around 10 or even 9 cents per watt. So this is the overall trend which we saw, that in fiscal year 20, only 190 megawatt was net metered. And by fiscal year 26, this closing June, we are now at around 7,000 megawatt of solar PV net metered capacity. And the net billing regime was announced in 8th February. So from 9th February till 2026 June, we see a total capacity of 209 megawatt of net billing applications have already been received, out of which some of them have already been granted the license. So the rate of the solarization from net metering to net billing has significantly reduced. However, a lot of this has now being shifted towards the hybrid systems. One important point is that in this 7,000 gigawatt, all 10 to 11 distribution companies are included. The K Electric, which is a separate vertically integrated utility in Pakistan, which feeds the Karachi region, is not included. So that is another 800 to 1,000 megawatt we can add on top of this. So all in all, around 8,000 megawatt of net metered quantum is there in Pakistan. And now the new quantum of net billing is started to see a rise. But the rate of rise is not similar to the rate of rise of net meter. The reason being, the people are shifting towards hybridized system. So why the curve went up after 2021? After 2021, this curve starts to go up. Please note that this is a log scale, so you might not see the trend as it is in actual. But if it is basically an exponential rise. So like I already mentioned in the previous, in my previous slide, the currency risks became visible. You know, the currency depreciated from PKR 162 to 280, and even at one time it went above 300 rupees per USD. So this contributed towards higher grid tariffs, which then contributed towards people, you know, shifting towards solar PV systems, because obviously it makes sense. The payback periods were initially as low as it was as low as 3, and then it became, once the USD PKR parity became obvious, it went as low as even 1 year for some cases. So this is a slide where the world was acknowledging Pakistan. These are some 4 different news reporting agencies where they mentioned Pakistan's obvious solar boom. So I'll go forward with this. So this was all the good part, that Pakistan became like a rising or shining example of solar boom. But the other side is that what are the challenges of the net metering? Now, Gayatri highlighted some of these challenges. I'll go into a little more detail and try to highlight one by one these technical and financial challenges. So when we talk about the technical challenges, we have 2 different technical, one with the local systems and one with the macro system. So in the local system, I mean the impacts on the distribution system networks. So there are 4 types of impacts. One is the overvoltage. So there's a phenomena that whenever you supply power back to the grid, or in any case, you oversupply of power, you will face overvoltages in the network. So with reverse power flows, people installing clustered rooftop solar systems in small narrowed streets, you will see that during the shoulder months, the skies are clear. It is ideal situation. The load of the residential or commercial systems are relatively less. So you will see a lot of feedback. And due to that feedback, they will the overall network will undergo overvoltage. With the overvoltage in place, you will see that many inverters and net meter installations are not tuned for the reactive power support. So combining this with lighter net loading and more reverse power flows, you will see that the power factor starts to decline. So ideally, the power factor should operate close to 1 and in the range of around 0.8 to 0.9. I'll show in my next slides how low it can go. And obviously, the reverse power flow is sort of power as well, right? It is power. So your whole distribution system needs to be designed according to the reverse power flow. How much power flow is now being supplied from the consumers towards the generation side. And then your protection systems need to change, your tap changer positions need to change. So all these settings need to be done as well. And last but not the least is the feeder and the distribution transformer thermal loading breach. So now you need to do the hosting capacity analysis, right? You designed your system for a one-way flow, and it was never designed for bidirectional. So you need to redesign your systems. You redesign your protection systems as well in order to cater for hosting additional solar PV systems. So this is an extract from one of my other presentation where we see that this is a feeder, a medium voltage feeder at one of the Lahore's distribution company. So we see during the winter, spring, autumn, and even during the summer seasons, during midday, there is no supply of power from the grid. Rather, there is reverse power flow. So this blue part going below the zero line is the reverse power flow. And on the right side, we see whenever there's this reverse power flow, we see the power factor drops as well. It drops in the range of 0.6. Right? And in the spring season, when there is maximum reverse power flow, we see it goes very low, almost zeros out. So this is something of concern. So the other part is that once the grid reaches an over voltage level, so your inverters trip, right? So normal condition, if you see on the right side, on the right side, the second diagram, which shows E grid versus E inverter. So the E inverter always has to remain higher than the grid voltage. Only that time the power will flow from the inverter to the grid. But what happens is that when the power is flowing a lot, E grid rises. So we see this yellow curve, it starts to rise and it breaches, it crosses the E inverter, and it reaches at a level where it is higher than the E inverter, which is the voltage of the inverter. At that moment, the inverter trips. And then when the inverter trips, it starts to, there's no power flow from it, right? So then the E inverter, the voltage of the inverter then drops again, and then this effect continues. So this is called the yo-yo effect. Unfortunately, the inverters which were there in 2015 were not designed to cater for these behavior. But after 2018, in IEEE 1547 was there, and in 2018, the inverters standard were revised to cater for this effect, to reduce their power on their own, and then to ride through that fault level or ride through that voltage, and to maintain this distance between the E grid and the E inverter. But the issue here is that, unfortunately, in Pakistan, the capacity building of the local installers is not up to that level. So what they do is that these settings are not catered for, and they're not activated. And what is done is that the inverters just starts to supply on that unity power factor. And unfortunately, this is why the overvoltage of the grid happens. Now, this is what the local challenge is. Now we'll talk about the transmission system impacts. In the transmission system impacts, we see this top diagram on the left side, which shows the marsh profile, load profile from 2017 to 2022. We see that from 2017 to 2022, the curves, the load profile was gradually increasing based on the population increase or whatever XYZ, the macroeconomic indicators were. But due to the solar boom, post 2022, on the right side, we see till 2025, now we see that how the duck curves is now is actually in place. And this is the impact which the transmission system operators are facing. So they quickly have to revamp, fast ramping generators from sunset to the evening time. And this causes a lot of stress on the thermal-based units because you do not have batteries at the moment in place in your network. You have gas-fired power plants, or you have water-based power or hydel-based power. Hydel-based power plants, unfortunately, kick in a little later and they're not that much available during the shoulder months. They only kick in during, for example, late May, June, and July, August period. So then you need to have gas-based power plants. And Pakistan faced difficulty in running these gas-based power plants in 2026 due to the attack on the Qatar LNG facility just recently in the US-Iran-Israel war as well. So on the left side, I've mentioned these quick ramping requirements. Obviously, the power swing, the duck curve is in place, and then the intermittency challenge as well. So all these challenges are being faced by the transmission system operators. Lastly is that we talk about the financial challenges. So in the financial challenges, as Gayatri also mentioned, that export credited at the full retail rates, then the utilities avoided cost of supply, eroding discos revenue, and shifting fixed network and capacity cost onto the non-solar consumers. And this was estimated to around 101 billion rupees in 2026. And then similarly, falling grid electricity sales do not reduce Pakistan's 2.5 trillion year intake for pay capacity payments to IPPs, right? We have to pay those capacity payments. We have lesser number of sales now, so the capacity payment has to increase, and that puts burden on the remaining consumer base. Similarly, solar adoption is capital intensive and concentrated among higher incomes, urban households. The resulting cost shift is disproportionately borne by the lower income consumers, like I mentioned. Buyback and tariff design misalignments. So this is something which is associated with now the course correction, which I was talking that we have already taken this course correction of the net billing from net metering to net billing. And then the circular debt and bankability risks as well remain there for the distribution companies. And this is what rapid uptake means for the grid finances. Like I mentioned, 101 billion is estimated DISCO's revenue loss, and 563 million USD cost shift to non-solar consumers estimated by the end of 2024. And 3.2 billion units decline in grid electricity sales during 2024. And so the proposed was that we shifted this from 27 rupees to 10 to 13 rupees. So there are two readings of the same numbers. So from the utility and the fiscal view, net meters consumer rely on the grid backup and reliability, but under 1.1 crediting contribute less towards fixed network cost, shifting a growing share of those costs onto the consumers without solar. And the prosumers and the industry view is that this is not the core issue. The core issue is the transmission losses and weak bill recovery and expensive. We agree to that as well, but two wrongs cannot make a right. So we say that the net metering is also part of the problem. So this was the overall financial impact in unit terms. So if we see the top graph, this is the estimated graph of net metering if we did not make a course correction of shifting from net metering to net billing. So we see that gradually it would have gone up to 14,000 megawatt of net metering capacity because people were rapidly installing it. And this, in terms of the financial impact, contributed to the non-solar consumers. We see that the red curve shows that in fiscal year 24, each unit of the non-solar consumer were raised by 1 rupees. In fiscal year 25, it would have been raised by 2 rupees. In fiscal year 26 by 3, 4, and so on. By fiscal year 34, it would have raised 5 rupees per unit burden on the non-solar consumers. Now, since we took the course correction, we foresee that this will remain to 2 rupees per unit for the non-solar consumers. And by the time fiscal year 30 is crossed, we foresee that the 7-year tenure of the existing net metering consumers will start to gradually end, so that the burden on the non-solar consumers will decline to, by fiscal year 34, it will die down to 1 rupees per unit. On the right side, these are some high-level figures that overall the consumers could have borne 4.4 billion rupees. And with the proposed regulation, now they would only have to bear 2.2 billion rupees by fiscal year 34. So 2.1 billion rupees was avoided from net metered consumer to the non-net metered or non-solar consumers. So now we have placed, since we have placed the net billing, so I'll try to highlight what was the difference between the net metering and the net billing prosumers regulation in Pakistan. So in the net metering, it was a 1-1 unit to unit adjustments. Now what we did was that imports and surplus exports are metered and priced separately. But the surplus exports are only metered after the self-consumption. So this is an advantage to the consumers. It is lesser lesser stringent than the feed-in tariff, but a little more stringent than the net metering. The full retail rate was there for the export credit rate in net metering, and which is now reduced to around 18 to 10 to 13 rupees, depending upon the energy purchase price, whatever it is at that moment. So agreement term, initially it was 7 years. Now we have reduced it to 5 years. The maximum installation capacity for the net metering regime was up to 1.5 times consumer sanction load. So if I have a connection of 10 kilowatt, I can install 15 kilowatt net metered system. But now this has been changed to 1. So if I have a 10 kilowatt connection, I can only install a 10 kilowatt system, and I cannot do oversize. So obviously for the net metering, bigger size meant bigger credit, bigger offset at a better retail value. Now oversizing, there is no incentive, because it is only, you're basically oversizing your system to give energy to the distribution company at a lower rate. So that it would be diminishing returns phenomena for the consumer. It would be good for the utility. Existing contracts, how we dealt, like I mentioned, we will honor the existing contracts till its expiry. In the net billing, it will be extendable. So if any consumer wants to extend its net metering beyond 5, they can extend it. The important part is the payback. Net metering regulations reached at a point, the economics reached at a point where in Pakistan net metering regime, the payback period was only around 1 to 2 years. While the course correction in the net billing, now it is back to 3 to 5 years. One important point is, unfortunately, in Pakistan, is that the technology moves faster than the rule book or the regulations. So in 2015, the capacity factor of 250-watt solar panels was around 15 to 17, and 250-watt solar panels, monofacial, polycrystalline was, fashion. Now there are 700 plus watt panels, 700-watt plus panels with bifacial, better gains, better technology, capacity factor of above 20%. So if you have a rooftop, it is generating much more power as compared to that same rooftop if you covered with solar panels 10 years ago. So what happened was that obviously you're feeding more back into the systems. Now, similarly, the inverter standards from 2003 till present, they have become smart. The inverters have become smart specifically after 2018. But unfortunately, the distribution companies and the regulator, they have not, basically aligned the regulations. They did make some amendments, but they did not amend the regulations according to what was required in order to save the distribution utilities from these technical impacts. Financial impacts is something else, but technical impacts are something which is there for the regulators and the distribution companies to worry about. And the equipment is there, but unfortunately, the regulations, they didn't change. Another important fix was the weak oversight. So in the net metering case...
Faizan, may I interject? We have some shortage of time, so could you wrap it up in like 3-4 minutes?
Yes, I can wrap it up. I only have like 3-4 slides left, maybe like 4 slides left. So I'll quickly wrap it up in like 2-3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
That's why I also gave the slide numbers. So anyway, so we had weak oversight, unfortunately. So what was one of the major crucial phenomena was that people used to install, say, 15 kilowatt. They were allowed to install 15 kilowatt, but due to lesser oversight of the distribution companies, due to non-grid modernization, due to no smart meters in place, people used to get a license of, say, 15 kilowatt, and then later on, they used to install more solar panels because the inverters allowed them to do that. And then they used to feed back and gain the credit. So now we have changed these regulations. The export maximum demand indicator is being monitored, and any units which is being exported beyond the allowed limit is being financially curtailed. So they'll not get any benefits. This is the real world solar stress test which Pakistan faced in April 2026. So because of the LNG attack, gas facility attack on Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG facility in February, we were shortage of LNG supply. So unfortunately, during the night time, there was load shedding to the tune of 6 to 7 hours. But in the daytime, we had enough solar due to 8,000 megawatt of net metering capacity, and then behind the meter as well. So due to that, there was no load shedding in the daytime. So on the night time, we faced load shedding, and this is one of the real world stress tests of solar which Pakistan faced and successfully ran. Now, what is the next? It's basically the battery rush. So with net billing in place, and with people knowing that net billing will be in place in the next 2 to 3 years, so the battery rush now started to happen. So we've seen in 2024 around 0.62 gigawatt, which is 620 megawatt hours of battery, was imported in the residential sector, and which increased to 2.5 gigawatt hour of battery energy storage systems in the residential sector. And this is all due to the fact that there were these talks around the regulators that net billing regulations are coming in place with lowering the incentives of feedback. So we have seen that in parallel, battery rush has started to happen in Pakistan. I think I'll skip this. I'll skip this as well. So this is probably the last slides before the key takeaways. So the potential solution and what Pakistan is doing. As Gayatri also highlighted, one of the potential solution is that we need to improve the oversight and enforcement of our regulatory measures. Then, of course, we need to monitor the transformers and feeder. We need to do SCADA modernization, which is also known as grid modernization. We need to install battery energy storage systems, smart meters. We need to install platforms at the utility level where we have a better oversight of distributed energy resources so that we can manage them. Virtual power plants are also a very important phenomena where we can actually bring all these distributed energy resources at a single platform and then control it and dispatch them as per to our advantages. And last but not the least is we need to update the grid codes and the tariffs. So overall, Pakistan is running all these basically potential solutions and try to find a way in catering all the solar rush and the battery rush. So we're doing the smart metering program. So we're rolling out AMI across all distribution companies. We're also rolling out our transformer monitoring program. We are placing grid-based data centers, in order to get all these data from the smart meters and the transformer monitoring systems. We have also formed the Battery Energy Storage Systems Committee to finalize the regulations against battery energy storage systems. And then obviously we're also doing, making much more better regulations than we were before. So the key takeaways of this presentation is that the surge in Pakistan did happen, but it was basically not policy driven, but mainly due to the macroeconomics and the solar making sense. The 75% PKR depreciation, 140% tariff increase, and of course 60% fall in the solar import prices between fiscal year 21 and 25 contributed towards this solar boom in Pakistan. And then now we did this course correction, and based on this course correction, we're seeing now a rush in the battery, but battery rush will not cause a trouble to the grid. It will be facilitating the grid, and in parallel, if we electrify or if we do the electrification of various off-grid communities as well as the transport sector, we'll see that all this battery energy storage systems, solar, and the EVs will work hand in hand and make the overall power sector much more sustainable. With this, I would like to thank you and SAARC for allowing me to present. Over to you, Ahsan.
Thank you very much, Faizan, for your excellent presentation. We will quickly go towards our question answer session. Mr. James Walker has to leave, so we'll just give him the first question relevant to James. You have mentioned that in the energy transition, innovation can drive sustainable development. So the question from one of the participants is, can innovation alone make clean energy more affordable for low-income communities, or is it economics is also behind this one? How do you see this?
Thanks for the question. It's definitely both. I think technological innovation is continuing to drive cost reductions in the key technologies that we see playing a role in the future, and that's a promising parameter in enhancing access to the renewable inputs that I think we all want to see. But we also need to see innovation in the other pillars that I mentioned. So there are other approaches to building renewables as part of a comprehensive policy approach to sustainable development, to, for example, the use in the agricultural sector that I highlighted in the presentation, where there is a energy reason to deploy a renewable solution in a given context, but it can also offer peripheral benefits that enhance the other parameters that are being prioritized in that given situation. So I think there are opportunities to use innovation to enhance the benefits that the renewable solution can offer, therefore enhance the business case and thus make investment easier, wherever that investment is coming from. I think a comprehensive and holistic approach is needed.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you. So another question, rather it's a very generalized type of question. For example, we know that India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh have already started net metering. They have tested different mechanisms and they are going on for more, matured systems instead of the net metering. So what do you see? I mean, those member states which are starting to go for net metering or net billing, like for example, Nepal or Maldives, if they start to go for these mechanisms, should they abruptly go towards the net billing mechanism, seeing the results of Pakistan and India, or they should go also through the same phase, like introducing very incentivized net metering mechanism and then go for net billing, or maybe average pool purchase price mechanism, things like this later on? If James would like to answer, otherwise Gayatri can answer.
I think that's a better question for Gayatri. Yeah, and I'll head off now. Sorry to leave, but thank you for having me. And
no problem, James. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ahsan, for that question. So for me, there's one more aspect to the systemic innovation that we talked about here in this presentation.
Gayatri, I think your fan is on, so
sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, the unbearable heat here in Germany. Sorry for that. My answer to that question is just adding to what James has said about systemic innovation in the beginning. So systemic innovation also means an overall development of regulations, technologies, business models, all of it. But it also, for us, means that individual countries should develop their own strategies depending on the personal or the individual circumstances and individual system developments that have happened. So it may not be possible for every country to start from the same. So every country has their own starting point. So I would suggest that best practices need to be shared, but at least it should be also adopted based on the systemic specificities that exist in the country. So there are lessons to be learned from what India has done, what Pakistan has been doing. So I guess the move to net billing is more of an example of what you can actually take away lessons from what to do, what not to do from there. So I would say it's a more individual country or system specific solution that should be developed.
Thank you very much, Gayatri. So another question is regarding in your slides, I was listening to you and you were saying something like EV charging may be complementing the electricity generation from the DER or the solar rooftop. So EV could complement that one. But what we have seen is that mostly in household basis, so in domestic households, EVs are basically charged during the night time, while solar generation is on the daytime. So this different cyclic nature of generation and consumption does not does it complements or it may be a big problem for the utility? What's your take on that?
So it is a problem not only for the utility, but it's also for the customer, because EVs are originally brought in with the intention of reducing emissions, right? So in the night time when you're charging, and as Faizan Saab actually pointed out that even in Pakistan, they had to have load shedding, or there was no solar supply in the night, which is the case all over. It means that the customer relies on more costlier thermal based or conventional generation, which is something we're trying to prevent, right? So the utilities need to come up with schemes which allows the EVs to charge during the day. So if you're not charging in the workplace, or sorry, if you're not charging at the house, then provide provisions for charging at the workplace during the day where the EVs may be parked. So those are alternative schemes the utilities have to think about when developing charging infrastructure. And charging infrastructure, just to mention from one of the studies that we recently did, charging infrastructure also has a huge impact on the distribution grid. So if you're thinking about fleet charging, you need to do a study on what the impact of that will be on the grid during the day, during the night. How is it supposed to cater for the demand that occurs from it? And similarly for domestic charging, there are a lot of things which should be factored, like simultaneity factor, for example, is something which stands out from me in that study as well. So for me, alternative schemes which support smart charging should be enabled.
Thank you. So we have Faizan. Faizan is not there, so I'll ask question from Gayatri. This talk about standardized equipment. Okay, Faizan has also joined us. So Faizan, it would more be applicable to you. This standardized equipment, IC certified equipment, there's a lot of equipment being imported in Pakistan, and we have seen in the past that those faulty equipment are not certified equipment, has been responsible for putting a bad tag on the technology, solar technology. So what is the government doing to ensure that faulty equipment being imported or developed locally is forbidden or is avoided, any penalty or anything mechanism to avoid that thing?
Yes. So first of all, what the government of Pakistan did was that in 2019, it passed on SRO, and it mandated that at the very port, whenever any equipment, whether it's solar panels or whether it is inverter, will be imported into Pakistan, it has to undergo some certain, it has to be of certain IEC standards. So that list is already there, number one. Number two, at the port, they have to provide the testing report, which is the certificate of conformity, or that these equipment which is being imported conforms to these standards. So this is at the port level. Then when you are installing at your premises, in terms of the net metering, because it has to be interacting with the grid, there are then some specific list of tests which the distribution utility also has to do and undergo. Unfortunately, that this is something which then comes up to the personal level of the of the human resource of the distribution company. That in this region sometimes it becomes very difficult, specifically to monitor whether this is being strictly followed or not. So the licenses, unfortunately, are granted on the desk level, and this is something which strict rules need to be imposed. We are working towards that. We have these mechanisms in place that the consumers can put forward a complaint. But I think it's more of a consumer's responsibility rather than the government's responsibility to ensure. We are doing a lot of campaigns, awareness campaigns, that this quality material needs to come into Pakistan, needs to be installed. But yet again, one of the deciding factor is low price, right? And once the consumer goes towards the low price, then substandard material products are something which they opt for, and then it causes difficulty for them and also for the utilities.
So thank you, Faizan. Another question relevant to you. You had mentioned in your slide, I was watching it, and you were saying that because of those different cyclics, like for example, the cooling requirement of the households is increased during the daytime, and then there is
Yes.
on those months of winters when there is no requirement of cooling, so then the generation is more, but the demand side requirement is less. So
Yes.
what do you say about the heating requirement? I've been seeing in our
I
country that instead of burning those gas stoves nowadays, people gas heaters, normally people are opting for those inverters to get heating requirement also. So does that complement anything?
Yes, that's one of a very good observation. And for the last 2 years, the minimum daytime demand is coming, or the minimum demand is coming during the period of March, right? So this view that maybe during the winters the demand is very low, it is now gradually changing, and this is also gradually changing due to the fact that people now are installing solar PV systems. So they know that even if they install, because in generally in this our part of the world, in the SAARC regions, electricity is considered very expensive. So people always go towards the gas facilities, gas-based heating systems. But now I am happy to see that this is being changed. And that is also one of the reasons, or credit goes to the solar PV systems, because now people are installing solar-based systems. And so they are now comfortable in electricity-based, space heating systems. So they install these inverters because they know. So the overall trend, which we see during the load trend, which we see during winter months, is now gradually increasing as compared to the shoulder months. In the shoulder months, it's declining because obviously there is no need for the fans or the AC systems, and there is clear skies. So yes, you're right that what we see, and also from the sales of the inverter AC-based systems, we see that yes, people are now moving towards electricity-based space heating systems.
Yes, and coming up to the discussion we had before with Gayatri, since electric vehicles are coming up very quickly in our markets also, so there will be increased load from them during their nighttime charging or daytime charging at offices. So what will be the
Yes.
impact of distributed generation systems, solar systems, along with electric vehicles on the grid? There must be some analysis or studies being conducted by Pakistan. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yes. Yes.
So another question is, any presenter can answer this question. How to avoid the oversizing of systems from the sanctioned load? We have been seeing that the customer does have a sanctioned load of 5 to 6 kilowatt, but then it installs a 10 kilowatt system,
10
15
kilowatt
kilowatt system, and it is able to export a lot of electricity above its requirement. So how to avoid that situation?
So I'll try to answer that. So there are two ways, right? One is that you want to technically control that system and you want to curtail its output, the inverter's output, or at the meters of the consumer, you want to physically curtail the export of the units. This is one part. The other part is, this is like the hard part, right? You need to install some sort of hardware, and then you need to have some platform where you need to control. So this is a little hard part. The easier part, which the Pakistani government, or which we did, is that we are not paying anything which is beyond the installed or the allowed or the licensed capacity. So how we monitor that? We monitor that in way that obviously we have a maximum demand indicator, and that indicator is being recorded in the smart meters. So every month that meter reader goes to either it's the smart meter or the digital meter. So every month this maximum demand, export maximum demand, not the import one. So the maximum export demand indicator is recorded, and if that maximum demand indicator is beyond a certain level, so then it is penalized and he does not get any financial benefit of that. So once you do not get any financial benefit of that, so what we have observed is that people now have started installing export control devices, right? So they know that they have installed they're allowed to feed back 10 kilowatt system, but they have installed, say, 30 kilowatt systems. So beyond 10 kilowatt, all the benefit is curtailed. They get zero benefit. So now what they do is they start to install export devices, and they limit that export control to that whatever the maximum limit is. And then they have started to install battery energy storage systems because they're not getting any benefit. So this is something which we did and which was easier to do. We just had to pass a regulation, and it was very cheap. And immediately we saw that the reform kicked in, and people now are channelizing their or making their systems as per the regulations or as per the approved licensing requirements.
Thank you. Gayatri, you want to say something on that one?
No, I think Faizan Saab said it perfectly. I think the move from net metering to net billing is one of the key ways you can stop oversizing, because that introduces self-consumption. They know that they're not going to get more profit for the excess that they're going to, serve. And of course, limiting it from the grid utility is also possible, because you'll understand the voltage profile changes that are happening from a particular customer. So maybe that is a good way to monitor how who is producing more or oversizing their systems.
So I'll just add one more point before you take the next question. Like Gayatri mentioned, ideal solution is net billing, right? So net billing is for the new consumers. So like I also mentioned in my presentation, that we also changed it for the for the existing consumers as well. So now existing consumers, we faced a backlash, the regulator faced a backlash, and then they have to continue their system. So in order to ensure those existing consumers, the regulations are in place that they will not get any financial benefit. But for the new consumers, obviously now they have to do the net billing systems, and for the net billing systems, even if they oversize and they give us the energy, we're happy to take it at a rate of 8 rupees, much lesser.
Okay.
Much lesser price.
Yes. But you are right that net billing could be the future, but then maybe after 2 to 5 years or 10 years time, they go for some kind of a better mechanism other than the net billing. So it's kind of the evolutionary nature of all these mechanisms, whereby if you face some problems with one mechanism, you opt for a better one. So we have another question from Habib, and the question is, due to net billing mechanism, people will become more cautious and will reduce their solar consumption to manage the same level of exports, because they want same amount of saving credits as they were getting from net metering from the grid. So this will ultimately reduce grid demand growth. I think it's rather kind of a comment. Do you want to say anything, Faizan?
Look, obviously, whenever, whether it is net metering, whether it is battery energy storage systems, obviously the demand from the grid will go out, right? So you have various tools or various mechanisms in order to keep them on the grid, right? I was at a battery energy storage system conference 2 days ago, and this similar question came up, that now since you're going towards net billing, people will be installing battery energy storage systems. Why not? Okay, so I'm sorry, I have to take another call. I think Gayatri can continue. Just give me.
I think we are over with this, so we don't have any other questions. To the participants, all the presentations will be available on our website. We will also upload the link of this video recording of this whole event on our website. You can go towards the link and watch the webinar again if you want, or if you have missed it, you can watch it. Secondly, the few reports were shared by Gayatri to one of the participants. So we would like to see if it's readily or open source information. We would also upload it on our website for the information of participants. So Gayatri, any last word from you? Otherwise, I'll go for the concluding this webinar.
Thanks, Ehsan Saab. That report is just something which is released very recently by the Nigerian government. So just to make sure that all the copyrights and everything are followed if you're uploading it on the web page. No, I don't have any last closing words, but thank you. Thank you for this very, very insightful discussion that we've been having here. And I'm happy that it's raised so many questions. And if there are any follow-up questions that we can answer, please feel free to share it with us via email, and we'll be happy to answer them as well.
Thank you very much, Gayatri. And definitely we will seek your permission, and with your consent, we will share the report. So with this, I would like to bring today's webinar to a close. Thank you all for joining this webinar. We heard excellent presentation from our distinguished speakers from IRENA and Ministry of Energy, Pakistan. And I hope all of you found this discussion useful. We will also welcome your suggestions and feedback for improving further future sessions, as well as any topics you would like us to cover in upcoming webinars. We would glad to take that forward. You could also post those questions to our email address, and we would get the response from our experts and get it back to you. With that, I'll sign off. Thank you again for being with us today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Goodbye and take care.